Welcome to Royal Education. My name is Miss Aaliyah. Welcome to the channel. Like, comment, subscribe, and hype the video so YouTube knows that you appreciate our content. Today's subject is math, so let's lock in. You can follow along with our resource from TPT Unit 5, Division Properties and Strategies. It has over 170 pages of resources to help your child study and worksheets for them to work on. Today's video will focus on division equations and the vocabulary needed to be successful. Let's start by looking at the division equation 10 divided by 5 equals question mark. It is important to understand what each part of the division equation actually means. 10 is our dividend, which means the total number of objects we have to divide. 5 is our divisor, which talks about the number of groups that they will be broken into. And the question mark stands for our quotient. It is the answer to a division problem. So whenever you have a question that asks you, what is the quotient? That means they're expecting you to do division in order to find an answer. Now, the dividend, 10, is usually going to be the largest number in the division equation. It is our starting point. And so our answer will always be less than the dividend. Unlike with addition and multiplication, we are not adding on to what we have. In division, we are actually giving away or splitting up our original number, which is the dividend. So our answer will always be smaller. A way of thinking about this is when we share something, we always end up with a smaller piece. When we divide, we want to make sure that everyone has an equal amount. And that is why when we divide, you should always expect a smaller answer than your dividend. Here we can see that 10 is our dividend, which represents the total amount of items we have to share. 5 is our divisor, which represents how many groups it will be split into. And 2 represents our quotient, which means how many in each group. So when we look at 10 divided by 5, our quotient should be 2. This is important because when we look at this equation, it tells us that if I am dividing 10 items amongst 5 people, that each person should get 2 of those items. Another way of thinking about this is in terms of fact families. 10 divided by 5 equals 2 can be checked if we do the inverse operation. Inverse means the opposite or flipping something around. What is the opposite of division? Well, the opposite of division is multiplication. Just like in multiplication, we are multiplying by groups. In division, we are actually sharing and splitting it up into groups. So if I were to read this equation backwards and use the inverse operation, it would be 2 times 5 equals, drumroll, 10. And that is how I know that I am correct. If the multiplication fact family and the division fact family are the same numbers, then I know that I am correct. Again, let's review what we've learned. 10 is the dividend or the total number of items that I have to share. 5 is the divisor or the number of groups. And 2 is my quotient, the answer to a division problem, and also the number in each group. But how does this help me with division? Well, as I stated earlier, if we know this, when you get a question like what is the quotient, you will know that the quotient is the answer to a division problem and that they expect you to divide in some way. Let's visualize what we've just talked about. I often use this example in class. If I, Miss Aaliyah, bring 10 pieces of candy to school, and that day I realize that I have 5 students. One, two, three, four, five. How do I get the answer 2? Well, let's figure that out. If my divisor represents the number of groups and my dividend represents how many candies I brought, then I'm going to draw a little picture to show you how I got the quotient 2. These are 5 mouths because each of my students wants to be fed. So I am going to evenly distribute the candy amongst my students. Notice how I distribute the candy. I give one piece of candy to each student at a time to make sure one doesn't have more than the other. I don't stop until I have run out of candy. Remember, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I stop there because my dividend is 10, which means the total number of items I have to give. So now that I have no more items, I want you to take a look at how many pieces of candy each child got. Can you guess what our quotient is? That's right. It's 2. That is how we got our answer. And if we do our inverse operation, let's count by twos and figure out what is the total if I have 5 groups and 2 in each group. How many candies do I have in all? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Excellent. This is how we use inverse operation to see if we have an accurate answer. Let's try another one. 12 divided by 2 equals question mark. 12 is our dividend or our total. 2 is our divisor, which means it's going to be broken into 2 groups. What is our quotient? Let's find out together. Let's use the same scenario we did before about the candy. So if Miss Aaliyah comes to school with 12 pieces of candy, but today she sees that she has 2 students. You have to now ask yourself, how many candies will each of them get? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And I stop right there because my dividend is 12, which means I only have 12 candies to give. Now I want you to take a very close look at each child and tell me what you think the quotient might be. How many candies will each child get? So, what's the answer to 12 divided by 2? The answer is 6. If my dividend is 12 and my divisor is 2, then my quotient has to be 6. Each child would get 6 pieces of candy. Now, in order to check my work, we will use the inverse operation. Again, the inverse operation is just flipping the equation around and using the opposite operation. What's the opposite of division? That's right, multiplication. So let's check our work. 12 divided by 2 equals 6. When flipped backwards, we'll say 6 times 2 equals, hmm, 12. That is correct. That is how I know that my answer is correct. Both fact families are the same. This is called inverse operation. Now it's your turn. 9 divided by 3 equals question mark. Let's see if you can work through this one on your own. If 9 is our dividend, our total, and 3 is our divisor, which represents the number of groups, then what will be our quotient? I'll give you some time in order to solve this one on your own. One minute left. Excellent. Now let's take a look and see if you got the answer correct. Using the same story, let's see if everything would add up. Again, 9, our dividend, represents the total number of items. If we use the same scenario as last time, if I come to school with 9 pieces of candy, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I have to share that candy amongst 3 people, 1, 2, 3. As you can see here, I've made 3 groups to represent the 3 people. Again, if I don't have all day to draw, you can just use circles. Above, you see my 9 pieces of candy, and below, you see my 3 groups, or my 3 people. I am going to divide or share the candy one by one until I have nothing left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now I have nothing left because my dividend says that my total was 9. Now my groups have been filled and everyone seems to have the same amount. Can you tell me how much is in each group or what my quotient is? So the answer to 9 divided by 3 is 3. If you got 3, that is the correct answer. There are 3 pieces of candy in each group, which means each child would get 3 pieces of candy. So 9 divided by 3 equals 3, but we're not done yet. Now that we know our quotient, we can work backwards in order to check our work. So can you tell me what is the inverse operation for 9 divided by 3 equals 3? I'll wait for you to write your answers down. Again, I want to know what is the inverse operation or the operation flipped backwards for 9 divided by 3 equals 3. It's 3 times 3 equals, hmm, 9. So if you wrote this as the inverse equation, then you are unequivocally correct. This is our inverse operation. And since all the numbers are the same, we know that our answer is right. Now we have another type of problem. Sometimes the numbers won't be so easy to divide equally. As you can see here, if I have 3 divided by 2 equals question mark, that is saying that I have 3 candies. If Miss Aaliyah has 3 candies and she has 2 students or 2 groups, how many would each student get? That I have to find my quotient. And so let's count until we have nothing left. 1, 2. Uh-oh, but now we have a problem because we have something called a remainder. A remainder is when you try to divide a number evenly into groups, but there's something left over. By adding it to the group, you would end up with uneven groups, so it must be left out. How do we show this in our answer? Yes, the answer would be 1, remainder 1. Each person would get 1 piece of candy, but we have to let everyone know that there was 1 left over. And so we represent that by saying R1. R stands for leftover or remainder. Okay, it's quiz time. It's time to show what you know.